Welcome to the world of Winter Survival, a brand new yet to be released game that kinda gives me a mashup of the Long Dark and the Forest vibes just blended into an excellent survival experience. Of course, minus the cannibals. The developers were kind enough to give me a review copy of the game and give it a test run so you guys don't potentially waste your money on a game that you don't want, which personally, I don't think it'd be that much of a waste. So this game offers two modes for you to play through. One being a story mode, which I'm yet to play. Initially, when I first started playing it, it just wasn't booting up for some strange reason, but it's fixed now, which unfortunately was before I made this review. And an endless mode, which is what I'm most familiar with. This one really adds a new competitor to the market, so it's pretty solid all round, and the survival elements in it are unreal. Definitely enough to sink your teeth into for a long time. So on the load up menu as you begin an endless mode, you have two options currently, Explorer or Survivalist. Explorer being a much more passive mode with weaker enemies and just an easier time surviving, then Survivalist mode which holds no hands and throws you straight into the deep end. Of course that's the one that I've been playing on. Once you choose a mode and are given a choice to customise your settings for a few different options that basically tailor the run to suit you, you're immediately thrown into a world with very little gear, blistering cold, and one simple mission: survive. Now my initial reaction to the look of this game was quite simply just wow. For a small development team to be able to pull together a world that makes you feel like you're strolling through the depths of Skyrim on your way to Riften, with the snowy mountains in the distance, the hot springs surrounding you, and just abundant nature to fill the world with life. Even if it's such a desolate plain, they've done an incredible job with only a few performance issues, but we'll get to those later. Straight off the bat, I was a little confused with what was going on, where I needed to be, and just what the aim was other than the basics: get food, water, shelter, track down some gear to build a fire, and just cover all your basic needs. A very extensive tutorial system covers pretty much every base, except for an introduction to the accolade system. Now I missed the first notification to say that we'd level up, so getting basic equipment was pretty tough, but once I found the menu, leveled up a few times, I realised the potential for growth and actually conquering this world and becoming a chief of the bears and wolves, living my true dream that I had for many years of playing the Long Dark, could finally be achieved. And I'm very excited to get into the late game content. I think for any survival enthusiasts, this game could be right up your street. Now one of my favourite things to do in an open world game of any sort is to just stop and listen. Just take the sounds of the nature and the world in and just fully immerse yourself into the world and get lost in the surroundings, making pretty much any mundane task just filled with life, and this game fills that void of silence incredibly well. Whether you're sat in a cave next to your fire, walking through the forest with a crunching snow underfoot, or taking a trip alongside the river and just exploring the nature, these guys have covered just about every base. The sounds of birds tweeting adds to their world environment, and the sound of a wolf lunging at you is enough to keep the intensity and fear within you just pretty much the entire time. As for the music, wow, there's not really a lot. I think the whole world does a good job at just reveling you in without the need for music, which is pretty mad. It's quite a rare sight. So I think we should start by clearing up the negatives. The optimization. Now, don't forget that this is still a pre-release test of the game that has been updated to fix a few issues already, and I'd be surprised if there isn't already a day one patch to fix any, fine line bits that need tuning up. But walking around this world with consistent frames is pretty tough, even with motion blur off to help stabilise it. Now, it did remain above 30 frames, which is ideal, and luckily did have an option to lock it off at 30 frames, but it would be nice to see some work there. Just polish it up, get it up to that 60 frames per second benchmark, and yeah, just have a nice streamlined time. Definitely work for improvement there. I've noticed a handful of bugs as well, but the most annoying ones have just been keys just randomly not working. Like, well, in this case right here, my inventory key just didn't work. Tapping away, but it was just locked into another menu. Well, locked into the little spear throwing mechanic that the inventory key just didn't work for some strange reason. So I've had a few times where the escape key hasn't worked, so we just haven't been able to exit the game, and other ones where like our left click just wasn't working for some bizarre reason. But these are all things that are just processes getting stacked on top of each other, causing issues that can be fixed. So there's definitely a little list of things that they need to get up to scratch with before making this a full release game. So it was still in early access, it's not the end of the world, so you kind of expect little bits like that. But yeah, there were some pretty major keybind issues in there. Another frustration is that upon death or exiting the game, items tend to just disappear. If you die, any logs you had sat by the fire next to you won't be there anymore, and any items I've placed in a chest to come back to the next day, so turn the game off, come back into it, have just vanished, which isn't really what you want in a survival game. I think one other con for me as well is once you start the game, you're kind of thrown into a world where you have to... your basic needs just dwindle too quickly. I think that's the best way to put it. So your food and water, solid, they stay very high all the time, but your cold meter just plummets almost instantly. Now I know that we are working at like minus 10 degrees, but with the clothes he's got on and constantly moving in nature, I feel like, you know, if you're sprinting, your body should warm up, your basic temperature should rise. As for the sleep, trying to be able to sleep whilst keeping your heat up and all of the above is tough, incredibly so. So there are options to build better campfires that last longer and will keep it burning all night long, but trying to keep and manage your cold meter as well as your awake meter is tough. It is really tough. It's not really a con, but it would be nice if they lasted longer, if that makes sense. So you had a bit more time to go out and explore, rather than constantly being called back to that campfire to get your heat back up. So it's tough. It is tough. It's definitely not for the light-hearted, but I feel like it could be, you know, potentially made easier on their end, rather than forcing you to just head back home every time, if that makes sense. Again, not really a con about the game as a whole, but an improvement, I guess. Or just like an ease of life thing. I know there is an explorer mode just for that, but everything else seems fine. So I love the whole survivalist mode as a whole, but those little needs just need lasting a little bit longer. The gameplay as a whole is pretty solid though. I haven't really got any major complaints yet. The core system is really good. Keeping on top of hunger and thirst and fatigue is pretty nice and simple. And it has a pretty funky wetness system, forcing you to strip down before going in, or dealing with being freezing cold until it all dries out, which is a pretty decent mechanic for a survival game that you don't really see that often. So a lot of the time you do get a wetness system, but it doesn't really have any major effect on the player. You know, nothing dropping down your health rapidly anyway. The leveling system is pretty spot on. The accolades helping you grow through the game and unlocking each new tile with time is a good way of doing it, without making you focus too heavy on individual trees, which, given the amount of time you spend out in the world surviving and exploring, not really focusing on a tree is ideal, so it's quite nice. I like it anyway. I think my overall verdict on the game is that it has a ton of potential. It's a pretty good buy at where it stands currently, depending on their price point. I don't think they've released it yet as far as I can see, but the core mechanics and gameplay make it a really fun survival game, set in a world that you can quite easily immerse yourself into for a very long time. I'm yet to make a full late game experience, but the time I've had with it has been very enjoyable, and with the addition of the story mode that I'm quite excited to give a whirl, there's a lot more that this game has to offer. You'll have to bear in mind that this still is an early access title, which sometimes is risky business, but it does also mean that there is a lot more updates to come, a lot more features to come into the game, and any feedback you give to them will potentially be worked into the game, which is great. So it keeps the experience fresh and fun for way longer than your standard AAA title. The game releases on Steam on the 6th of March with a price yet to be determined, but there will be a link in the description to their store page. So I'm not affiliated with the developers at all, but if you want to check the game out for yourself, there it is. But I think for now, I'm going to love you and leave you just here. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this short and sweet review. Like, subscribe if you did, and I hope you stick around for more of the videos. Yeah, peace.